Our scripture passage for today comes from the Gospel according to Matthew chapter 5, verses 13 through 20. We join Jesus mid-sermon. He has just spoken the blessings, the Beatitude. Blessed are those. And he continues in a word to his disciples and to the gathered crowd. Let us listen for God's word to us this day. You are the salt of the earth. But if salt has lost its taste, how can its saltiness be restored? It is no longer good for anything, but is thrown out and trampled underfoot. You are the light of the world. A city built on a hill cannot be hid. No one, after lighting a lamp, puts it under the bushel basket, but on the lampstand, and it gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father in heaven. Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have come not to abolish, but to fulfill. For truly I tell you, until heaven and earth pass away, not one letter, not one stroke of a letter will pass from the law until all is accomplished. Therefore, whoever breaks one of the least of these commandments and teaches others to do the same will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever does them and teaches them will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I tell you, unless your righteousness exceeds that of the Pharisees and scribes, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Let us pray. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Who are you? Begins the blue caterpillar talking to Alice in Lewis Carroll's groundbreaking book of children's fantasy literature, Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. Who are you? It is a question that leaves Alice a bit stunned after already being in quite a state, having changed sizes several times that day. She hardly knows how to answer. Who are you seems quite a simple question, yet there are so many ways of answering. No one answer seems quite adequate either. Many times in the Gospels, people asked Jesus or wondered, who are you? And Jesus answered in many ways, I am the bread of heaven. I am the light of the world. I am the gate. I am the good shepherd. Jesus often didn't answer questions straight out, and perhaps the caterpillar would have been intrigued by his many responses. It's hard for us sometimes to answer this question about ourselves, though. Who are you? Maybe it's one we first remember struggling to answer in teen years as we start to define ourselves apart from our family of origin, striking out with, or at least trying on, a new and perhaps very different identity from those in our household. Or the question, who are you, gets difficult to parse out when we find ourselves searching for a job after college, or in the middle of life, or at the beginning of retirement. So many of us, without even realizing it, may define ourselves first by a profession, such as I'm a teacher, or family roles, I'm a daughter, or I am a parent. It is natural to define ourselves in relation to what we do in our careers or what role we fill in our families. But sometimes we are asked either by ourselves or by someone wanting to know about our inner core, our reason for living. Who are you? And this question pries at our hearts and souls about whose we are and where we find our true identity. Often we tell children that in baptism we are answering this question on their behalf, who they are, as we celebrate a person's identity as a child of God, as Christ's own, first and foremost, above other titles or names. And here in our passage today, Jesus tells us more about who we are as children of God and as his followers. You are the salt of the earth. and you are the light of the world. These declarations are not spoken just to one person, but to many. We're joining one of Jesus' most famous and longest recorded sermons. These bold declarations stand out to us because instead of focusing his message that day on who he is, Jesus spends the whole part of this sermon on who we are. Jesus' word "you" is not you in singular. He is speaking to that whole crowd gathered along with his disciples. He is saying his equivalent of a plural "you." His words indicate he is saying y'all, or I'm learning yous in this area of the country. Yous are the light of the world. Together. The salt is a good thing, a powerful thing, so powerful that we easily forget how much we depend on it, and must also be intentional with its use. According to the Dietary Guidelines for Americans, released a couple of years ago, virtually all Americans are consuming way too much salt daily, literally. Even a little salt can bring flavor to bland dishes and bring out their natural flavor. Salt is what keeps us more buoyant, too, in sea waters. And salt scattered on the ground can melt ice and even keep us from slipping or running into each other on the road. As salt, we are called to flavor our world with this way of being Jesus' followers. Throughout his ministry, Jesus explains and shows us what it means to live as a true child of God in the world, to tend the sick, to welcome children, to share good news with those who feel unloved or unwanted. Jesus' own ministry was more like salt instead of, say, honey, because his ministry was not sickly sweet. He often had some salty words for those who were tending to their own reputations or self-righteousness before the needs of others. So rightly, instead of saying you are honey, Jesus says you are salt. Salt also makes us thirsty. Being salt, we may hunger and thirst more for righteousness, for right relationships with God and with one another. You are the light of the world. This one might be harder to accept for those of us who have already heard who Jesus is, that he is that light. The gospel writer John tells us that Jesus describes himself as the light of the world, and we might understand that any light that we, as his disciples, are, it is Christ's light first that gives us that glow. But Jesus here tells us not to discount the way he has lit a lamp within us and called us together like a city to be a light unhidden from the world. The image of a city on a hill has sometimes been used to explain how the church should be a shining example. And yes, we should be an example of how to live with each other. Having our light shine is also about the ways that we treat others, though, in the name of Jesus. Being made in the image of God, we are that light that is the joy of God's own heart. God gives us agency as those made in his image. God gives us gifts of creativity and courage and compassion. And here, Jesus is telling us it is good and right to be who you were made to be for God's glory. We are salt and light, and a little can go a long way. A grain of idea, a crack of light shined on a global need. So much may grow from one conversation, one nudge, one affirmation, one prayer. As poet Olav Høeg once mused, "Don't bring the ocean if I feel thirsty, nor heaven if I ask for a light, but bring a hint, some dew, a particle, as birds carry only drops away from water, and the wind a grain of salt." In 2001, there was a student at the University of Chicago who temporarily lost his student visa status because of a missed paperwork deadline. While Saket Soni had his status restored, he said that the experience of living, even for a short time, as someone who did not have the right paperwork in the US, left him in fear about whether he could stay, and gave him a new empathy for workers who are undocumented but remain a critical part of the workforce in our country. Especially when it comes, he found out, to disaster recovery. Some 20 years later, this student, Saket Soni, has started a nonprofit called Resilience Force, whose mission is to strengthen and secure the millions of people whose work and heart and expertise make sustainable recovery from disasters possible. He spent a lot of time interviewing workers who travel basically from one disaster to another. Some have had 20 disasters in their work experience, but many still continue to live in fear of deportation, especially as their employers owe them a great amount of money at the end of a job. Somehow that is when government officials come knocking. Soni said that while their efforts include working with government and corporations, they also reach out among workers in disaster with simple methods of increasing communication and connection in the midst of that disaster. And he told a story of a family whose house had been flooded in Hurricane Katrina. Resilience Force at that time had only a few volunteers, but they sent them to the area, and for one house, they were able to provide a translator on site. Throughout the day, the family members who were still trying to live in their damaged house and the workers who were coming alongside them to clean it out were able to share details about their families, talk across political divides, and at the end of the day, Resilience Force provided a meal for them to share together. Soni noted that the next day, a sign that the family had nailed to the front of the house, "Strangers will be shot," had quietly been taken down. We are not salt and light for ourselves. As ecumenical leader William Temple once wrote, "The church is the only organization on earth that exists for those who are not its members." Never think that your one grain, your one light, what you have to offer is unimportant or unneeded by the world. Salt and light are who you are, who we are, we are created to be, and a shared meal may just prevent an act of violence. A common word, a moment to listen, makes a stranger a friend, a sister, a brother. With Christ's help and leading, we bring flavor, safety, healing, and thirst for right relationship with God and each other. And with Christ's help, we illumine places and people for the better. It is who we are as children of the living God, the delight and light of our lives. May it be so for you and for me. Amen.